Welcome. Those of you that are watching online, those of you with us today, welcome. We're in this series called All In, as I said, and we started this a couple weeks ago, and jumping right back in today. And today, for my topic, it's a little unique, and it's the idea of being a yes man. Now, I know we don't like the idea of being a yes man. In fact, I think many of us, if we were honest with ourselves, we kind of carry around like a badge of honor, the idea that we're not a yes man, right? Like nobody's going to tell me what to do. Nobody has control over me, right? I speak my own mind. I do whatever I think is right. Nobody controls me. I'm my own person. And so the idea of a yes man just flies into the face of our autonomy that we wear around like this badge of honor. And today I want to talk to you about being a yes man when it comes to your relationship with God. Now let me read to you the definition of a yes man. Are you ready? In case you already didn't like the idea of being a yes man, this will probably solidify it even more for you today. The Webster's definition of a yes man is it's a person who agrees with everything that is said, especially one who endorses or supports without criticism every opinion or proposal of an associate or a superior, right? And maybe you've never read the definition, but you get the idea of what a yes man is. And you probably have prided yourself on the fact that you're not a yes man. Truth be told, I think all of us are a yes man. If you're married this morning, you can just be honest, you're a yes man. I don't care how tough you think you are and you rule the house and you're the boss. The truth is, there's moments where you're just like, yes, man, or maybe for us guys, it's yes, ma'am. You just, whatever they say, you just like, okay, going along. If you have a job, truth is, you're a yes man. You're a yes man. If you're in pretty much any type of relationship, there's going to be a moment where you're going to be a yes man. So it kind of humors me, actually, in some ways. I was thinking about this. It humors me, some of the people that will tell you, like, I'm not a yes man. I had somebody send me a text a few months ago, and it was this raving text. And at the end of it, they said, I can't believe that you just surround yourself with yes men. And it's funny because a lot of times the people that are saying that, and then you look at their life, and they're some of the biggest yes men, he or she are some of the biggest yes men around. But we want this idea that we're in control, that nobody's going to dictate the life that we're living, what we're doing, how we think, the decisions we make. Truth is, we're all yes men. We're all yes men. And I want to show you this morning that that's not a bad thing. It's kind of like, any of you ever seen the Yes Man movie? Jim Carrey, Carl, the movie. It's a hilarious movie. I love it. He goes to this seminar, and he's surrounded by a bunch of yes men. In fact, they say yes to everything. And the guru that's kind of leading, one of the scenes is my favorite, is the guru that's kind of leading the seminar points out, he asks, is anybody here for the first time? Nobody raised their hand. Of course, Jim Carrey's buddy raised like, this guy's new. And so he says to Jim Carrey, would you like to introduce yourself? And he says, no, thank you. And the guru's like, and everybody's just like silent. Like, what did he just say? And he said, I said, I don't want to share. He said, no, what did you say before? They said, I said, thank you. Like, no. What did you say right before that? He said, no. And everybody just starts like chiming in because they're just a yes man. In the movie, I love the premise of the movie though. The premise of the movie is that he was living a really boring life, wasn't experiencing all that life had to offer because he would never say yes. He just said no to everything. You probably know people like that, right? They're not adventurous. There's no spontaneity in their life. They say no to everything, to opportunity, to new adventures, to new things in life. It's just like, no, right? There's fear, they're complacent where they're, for whatever reason, they don't say yes. I want to show you this morning that your life could radically be changed for the good if you started saying yes. If you became a yes man. In fact, just like the guru said to Jim Carrey, I want to encourage you and challenge you this morning that every time God speaks to you, every moment, Jim Carrey's like, well, what about the times that I say no? He's like, you don't understand. You'll mess everything up if you say, I want to challenge and encourage you this morning, individually, and us as a church, corporately, that every time God asks you to do something, every time God asks you to take a step to say yes. Just say yes. Just say it. No matter how uncomfortable it may be, no matter what it looks like and how unknown it may feel, no matter how uncertain to you it may be, I want you to know that your life would radically be changed if you would simply say yes. Every single, I want you to think about it for a moment. Think about the times that you know God's asked you to do something, God's asked you to take a step, God's asked you to make a move, and you've been hesitant. I don't know about you, I don't want to live a life of regret, wondering what could have been. I don't want to live a life of FOMO, right? That I might have missed out on something because I refused to say yes. Yes, and there's a story in the Bible that I want to kind of jump from this morning. It's found in 2 Kings chapter 5, and it starts off by like this. It's important. Read this first verse. It says, now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. Here's what the Bible tells us about Naaman, is that he was a great man in the sight of his master. He was highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. Watch this. He was a valiant soldier. So this is a man of notoriety. This is a man of power. This is a man with a reputation. This is a man's man. He's a valiant soldier, but he had a problem. He had leprosy. And when Aram had captured a particular group of people, there was a little girl that was one of the servants that they captured, and she gets word that Naaman has leprosy, and so she sends word to him and tells him, there's a prophet in Israel that if you'll go see him, I believe he can cure you from leprosy. And so you'll have to go back and read the whole story. I don't want to go through all of it this morning, but finally Naaman says, all right, I'm going to go and see him. And so in verse 9, he takes his horses and his chariots, and he goes to Elijah's house. And then watch what Elijah doesn't even come to greet him. Elijah, in fact, sends a messenger to him. This is a man of a reputation, of power, of authority. He comes to the man of God, and the man of God doesn't even respond directly to him. You imagine the shot that he's taken to his pride right about then. He just sends a messenger out to him, and here's what he tells him to do. He says, I want you to go, and I want you to wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. So the prophet sends a messenger, tells him, if you'll go and you'll dip 7 times in the Jordan River, and you'll be cleansed, and you'll no longer have leprosy. And Naaman does what a lot of us do when God calls us to do something that might be a little bit uncomfortable. Something that we don't want to do. Something that don't sound right. That doesn't seem like that's what you would enjoy doing. And so Naaman actually went away angry. And here's what he said. And some of you have probably said this in your own words. He said, I thought he would surely come out to me, right? I'm so important. I have got all this power and authority. I thought for sure the prophet would have came out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. See, he had already had an idea of what God was going to call him to do. And when it didn't match up, he actually got angry. Some of you have done that before. Some of us have done that. We've got angry when God's asked us to do something that maybe you thought was below you. Maybe you thought was just too uncomfortable for you to do. In fact, he says, are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, watch this, aren't they better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? And so he turned and he went off in a rage. Basically, Naaman tells God, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And here's why is he thought he had a better way for things to happen in his life. He thought there was a better way for him to be healed. In fact, he tells his servants that. He's like, aren't there other waters in the area that are a lot cleaner, that are a lot better, that are a lot healthier? Like, wouldn't you think that, like, this is what we do. Sometimes we think we know better than God. I want to challenge you to say yes to God no matter what he calls you to do. And here's why. If you're taking notes, just write this down. It's because God knows better than you do. And this is hard. This is why you don't want to be a yes man. This is why you find yourself hard just sometimes saying yes to somebody that's in authority over you. It's your boss. It's your wife. It's whoever. Just, like I said, somebody that's in authority over you. It's somebody, one of your superiors. You find it hard to say yes. You know why? Because you know better. And the truth be told, when it comes to our relationship with God, and God asks us to step out and do something and to do it a certain way and to serve in a certain position, we say no because in the back of our heads, we know better. Or because it's uncomfortable. I remember as a kid, I was probably 12 years old. And one of the things that my parents, my mean, vicious parents, did to me is they made me do chores. I know. You guys, we should probably just pause right now. Like, we should be having prayer for Pastor Donnie this morning. They made me do chores. In fact, my dad, I feel like this is a therapy session right now. My dad, just hear me out for just a moment. My dad made me mow the yard. At 12 years old, I had to go out, and we didn't have automatic mowers at the time. He just pulled up and just like cruises down the, right? You had to manually push that lawnmower, and he made me empty the bag. He made me weed eat. We had this edger, and so I had to edge the yard. The lines had to be, you feeling me this morning? And so I vowed that when I got older, I would never be a yes man. I was never going to do this in my life. In fact, I told myself because I had to be obedient, and I had to do what he said, that the first thing, I remember telling him, the first thing I'm going to do when I become my own man is I'm going to hire somebody to do my yard. And in fact, I did. When I turned 20 years old, bought our first house, got married, and one of the first things that I did, just because I knew better, like I refused to let someone, I was still living with that. One of the first things I did, we were broke. We didn't have any money, but it didn't matter. I found a way to find a gardener and never landscaped my own yard. I know some of you are all laughing, but the truth is you've done the same thing. Like you just don't like the idea of somebody telling you what to do and how to do it. And I would argue with him about how the lawn should be cut. And he's like, nope, you're going to do it my way. You're going to do it my way. And can I tell you, that's what it's like when it's in our relationship with God. That God tells you to do something and he tells you to do it a certain way. It's not because he has meant harm for you. It's not because he's trying to make your life just uncomfortable and hard, although sometimes that's what it entails. The truth is, it's because God knows better than you. God knows better. He knows better than you do. And so here's Naaman, and the prophets tell him to go dip 7 times in the Jordan River. And Naaman's thinking in his mind, this is not fitting for a person of my status. This is far inferior to the rivers of my own homeland. Doesn't he know? That's what he said. Doesn't he know who he's talking to? Doesn't he recognize who I am? In fact, the Jordan River, they say, is one of the muddiest and filthiest rivers in the entire region where Naaman lived. And so in every way, what God's asking Naaman to do is it's uncomfortable. And as a result, here's Naaman, and he's resisting to do what God's asking him to do because Naaman knows better. Knows better. But as long as Naaman refuses to do what God's telling him to do, as long as Naaman says no, he's going to live out his life with leprosy. And so he comes back home, and that young lady that had told him to get a hold of the prophet, he begins to have a conversation with her. Here it is, Naaman's servant. She went to him and she said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? Like he was expecting God to show up in this incredible way. She's like, if God would have told you to do something great and amazing, would you have done that? She says, how much more then when he tells you wash and be cleansed? And so finally something clicks inside of Naaman. He went down, he dips himself in the Jordan 7 times, just as the man of God had told him. His flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young man. I want to ask you this morning, what's God calling you to do that you're resisting doing because it makes you uncomfortable? What's God calling you to do? What steps is God asking you to make that you're telling God no because it makes you uncomfortable? In your relationships, what's God asking you to do that you're not willing to do because it makes you uncomfortable? In your career, what is it that God's asking you to do this morning? Steps God's asking you to make that you're not willing to do just because it makes you uncomfortable. Maybe God's calling you to humble yourself in a way and you refuse to do it because it's not comfortable. Can I tell you the Christian life that God calls us to is not just a life of comfort. That didn't go over very well, but it's the truth. The fact that God's calling you to do something that'll lead you to discomfort, that's not a good reason to say no to God. I'm asking you to do today to choose to say yes. To be a yes man. Whatever God calls you to do is as uncomfortable as it may be, as humiliating as it may be to you. Like God may be asking you to serve, even right here at the church, in a certain way that you just think, man, that's way below me. Like, don't these people realize what I have to offer? Don't they know who God, don't you know who I am? Don't you know what I possess? I'm asking you today to choose to say yes. To say yes. The second thing we can take from this story, which will help us become yes men for God, is that the reason many people don't say yes to God is not just because they know better, but it's because they think they know best. They know best. I want to tell you today that if you'll say yes to God, you'll actually experience the best of your life that God has planned. Your best life, literally, it's on the other side of you saying yes. Yeah, just to whatever he says. Yes. Whatever he asks you to do. Yes. And I think the other reason that many of us don't step out and we don't say yes to God is because there's the unknown, right? It's not just that we're uncomfortable with what God's asking us to do, but a lot of times God asks us to do something and he doesn't give us all the details. You remember as a kid, right, when your parents would tell you to do something, what was the first thing you always said? Why? Why? I remember my kids were younger. It was like they were a parrot, right? It was like, why? Why? Well, everything I ask them to do, why? Why? You know, go pick up your clothes. Why? Go clean your room. Why? Don't run out in the street. Why? Don't put your hand over the fire. Why? 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 And the truth is sometimes God's asking us to do something. You know, you sound like a little 3-year-old kid. And you're like, why? God's like, I want you to go serve. I want you to start serving in the kids ministry. Why? I'd love you to be part of the hospitality team. Why? I want you to start giving faithfully. Why? I want you to start sharing the good news of Jesus with your neighbors. Why? 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 And the truth is many of us refuse to say yes because of the fear of the unknown. Because God, maybe even rationally, can I tell you something? Maybe even rationally what God's asking you to do doesn't make sense. In fact, oftentimes when God calls me to do something, you know how I know it's him? Because this is the most irrational thing that I could think of. It's like God calling us to plant a campus in Pomona in the middle of a pandemic. That doesn't make sense. Why? And getting a phone call a few months ago, and a buddy of mine saying, man, I would really think you and Sonia would be the ones to transition here as pastor at Riverside. Why? God, do you not, hello? Did you not notice what was going on right now? Have you been kind of checked out the last year? Did you not realize what was taking? We're in the middle of a massive pandemic. Like, people are slowly even coming back to church, and you're wanting us, now you want us to step out and to take our church from 1 to 3. Why? And God's just saying, Donnie, just say yes. Just say yes. Yes, you know why, God? And God's saying, here's why. I know what's best for you. I know you think you know what's best. You think you know the best way to do things, but God's saying, I know what's best, and I'm not going to show it all to you right now. I'm not going to, sometimes, you just get frustrated with the kids. You know what you would say? Come on, parents, what would you say when your kid said why, and you've already given them like 500 reasons why to do what you've told them to do? This is therapy for me this morning. I'm reliving when my kids were young, and I had to tell them over and over again. Finally, I'd get so frustrated and infuriated, and I would say, because I said so. That's why you're going to do it. Because I said so. You know why you need to do what God's telling you to do? He's not going to explain it to you. He's not going to give you all the details. You know why you need to do it? Because I said so. That's what God's saying to you this morning. I know you don't like it because you don't want to be a yes man. And you want your own opinion. And you're not going to just do what people tell you to do. And you're going to have control over your own life. But I'm telling you, when it comes to your relationship with God, you need to be a yes man. And whatever God tells you to do, just say yes because he said so. That's it. That's the only reason you need today. Whatever God's saying to you, say yes because I said so. Because I know better. God, listen to what God's saying to you this morning. Because I know better. I know better than you do. And actually, I know what is best for your life. So just say yes. Yes. I'm like the guru in the Yes Man movie. Yes. I wish I had some yes men with me this morning to just help me. For all the people that are saying no, what do we tell them? We just say yes. We're yes men. We're yes. We just say, God, whatever you say, we say. What do we say? All of you online, say it with me. We say yes. We say yes. We say yes. There's a story. In fact, it's when Jesus first comes on the scene in his earthly ministry. It's the first miracle that's ever recorded that Jesus did. It's in John chapter 2, and he goes to a wedding. And he's there, and word gets out. His mother's there. He's there with his family. And word gets out that they're running out of wine. You imagine that? A wedding with no wine? That's what Sonia and I's wedding was like. We had no alcohol at our wedding. Only, oh to God, if Jesus would have just showed up at our wedding. It would have been so much better. No, I'm just kidding. It was like a wedding like Sonia, like mine and Sonia. We had no alcohol at our wedding. That means Jesus wasn't present, but no, I'm just kidding. So there's a wedding going on. Where's Babe? Babe, wouldn't that have been great, man, if Jesus would have been at our wedding? Anyways, there's a wedding going on, and they're running out of wine. And this was going to look really bad on the host of the reception. And so word gets out, and Jesus happens to be standing there, and his mom's there, and they come back, and they're like, oh, my God, we're running out of wine. And watch what Jesus' mother tells all the servants. His mother said to the servants, whatever he says, you do it. Whatever he says. I love this. Could you imagine if we lived with this type of attitude when it came to our relationship with God? Whatever he says, do it. Whatever he says. Whatever he says. And so Jesus tells the servants, here's what I want you to do. He says, grab these 6 big jars. They held about 20 to 30 gallons of water each. And he says, I want you to fill those 6 massive jars with water. Oh, yeah, that's genius, Jesus. Let's do that, right? These people are looking to have a good time tonight. Oh, man, imagine the great things that are going to happen tonight and all the fun we're going to have as we start handing out glasses of water tonight. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea, Jesus. But they did it. They gather these jars, and they fill them with water. Water. The party's going on, and the servants, then he says, I want you to pour that into glasses, and I want you to go start to serve that to everybody. Oh, man, isn't this an ingenious idea? Isn't that great? And these people, they're not even drunk yet, so they know the difference, right? So he's like, I want you to start passing. And so, remember, Mary told, whatever he says, just do it. And they start passing out the water, and man, people are having a great time. In fact, watch this. All of a sudden, one person, he stands up and he tells the master of the banquet, listen, he says, a host always serves the best wine first, he said. And he's acknowledging the host of the banquet. He said, but man, when everyone's had a lot of drink, then they bring out the less expensive wine, right? Like basically, once they're hammered, you can give them whatever they want, right? But you got to get them to that point. But watch what he says. He says, but you, watch this, don't miss this. You have kept the what? You have kept the best. See, because God knows best. God knows best. God's asking you to do something today. He's asking you to step out and make steps to make something happen. Number one, he knows better, but you know what the heart of God, what you're feeling today that God's calling you to do, you know, at the heart of God and his question to you today, you know what it is? Is God wants what's best. God has the best life planned for you. And your best is on the other side of your yes. You saved the best wine for last. This all happened because there was a group of servants that simply said yes. So maybe today God's asking you to do something that seems totally off the wall, that you can't find any rational justification for, any rational reason why you should do it. Maybe today God's asking you to give more through his work here at the church. But you're like, man, our financial situation, I don't know what it would look like if we stepped out and we gave like God's asking us to give. Maybe God's calling you to volunteer in a ministry, and you're like, but God, I don't have experience in doing that. That doesn't make sense for me to do. I don't feel qualified to step out I don't feel qualified to lead a small group, to lead a prayer team. God, I can't step out and do that because that doesn't really make sense for me to do that. Don't let the unknown keep you from saying yes to God. Your best life is on the other side of yes. Yes, God, whatever you're asking me to do, whatever you're calling me to do today, whatever steps you're asking me to make today, I'm just going to say yes. Yes. So one of the reasons we refuse to say yes to God is because he's calling us to do something uncomfortable. The second reason that many of us may be reluctant to say yes to God is because of the unknown, right? We're not just sure. It doesn't make sense. There's no rationale for what God's asking us to do. And sometimes, for whatever reason, the reason that we're hesitant to give ourselves to what God's asking us to do is because we're uncertain. We're uncomfortable, we're unknown, or we are uncertain. So if you're taking notes for me, I want you to write this down. Number one, the reason you say yes is because God knows better. The number two is because he knows best. And number three, I just want to challenge you with this. Just say yes. Just say yes. It doesn't matter what reasons we've given ourselves to this point for not doing what God is asking to do. Whatever it is in our unwavering or our uncertainty that we've been missing out on, many of us are missing out on opportunities that God has for us because we refuse to say yes. And the truth is, sometimes the only doors of opportunity that you have in your life, the only thing that will open those doors of opportunity is your obedience. The scripture said, in fact, God prefers obedience even over your sacrificing. So you could be sacrificing and trying to do everything and gloating about everything you're doing for God. God's not asking for just that. God's asking you to be obedient, to just say yes. That no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how unknown, no matter how uncertain you may be, just say yes. Just say yes. Because not only is your best life on the other side of you saying yes, your yes, write this down, your yes leads to your next. Your yes is what will open up the door of opportunity that God has put in front of your life. Your obedience is what will open up the doors of opportunity that God has. Your yes leads to your next. So I want to, as I'm closing, I'm going to show you this story. There's a story in Jesus. One day he comes out and his disciples, they're out fishing. And one in particular was Simon. And Simon is a professional fisherman. He knows what to do, right? This is what he does for a living. He makes a career as being a fisherman. And so one day Jesus comes out and he sees them in the boat. And they have been out fishing all night. and they have not caught one thing. So clearly the fish aren't biting, or it's the wrong season, the water's too cold. For whatever reason, they've went an entire night without catching any fish. And this was uncommon. This didn't happen. These are professional fishermen. And so Jesus, he comes up to the fishermen. He tells them, he says, I want you to launch back out, and I want you to throw your nets on the other side of the boat this time. Once again, Simon's a professional fisherman. He knows what to do. Can you imagine what he's thinking? He's like, Jesus, look, I love you. You're doing some incredible things. Your dad's a carpenter, bro. If I wanted you to build me a cabin at the house or something, that's great. But when it comes to fishing, I know what to do. I'm the professional fisherman here, right? But watch this story. Simon answers, he says, Master, we've worked hard all night and we haven't caught anything. Watch this. But because you say so. Because you say so, because you say so, I'll let down the nets. And watch this. Your yes leads to your next. Because when they had done so, watch this, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. In fact, they began signaling to their partners in other boats to come and to help them. And they came and they filled those boats so full that they began to sink. See, Simon, he knew better. He knew the right way, but he decided, okay, God, in spite of how uncertain, how uncomfortable, how this doesn't make sense, there's no rationale to what you're calling me to do, Simon just said, but because you said so, we'll try it your way. We'll do what you said to do. You ever remember as a kid playing the game Simon Says? Anybody remember that? Right? Like Simon Says, stand on one foot. Right? Simon says, twirl around. Simon, you remember that? And whatever Simon said, you had to do everything that Simon. I was thinking about that. I was like, I wonder if they got this story from the Bible. The truth is, our life is kind of like what happened here in Simon's situation. Except it's not Simon Says. Simon, in that moment, it wasn't whatever Simon said. Simon had to do whatever Jesus said. But can I tell you, that's kind of like our life this morning. It's kind of like the game of Simon Says. Except it's God saying. And God's saying, I want you to give. I want you to serve. I want you to move. I want you to speak. I want you to forgive. I want you to release whatever you're harboring towards another person. Like the guy Simon Says, whatever God says, it may seem crazy. It's like standing on one foot with your finger on your head and you're twirling around. I can't even do that, but sometimes it feels like that. Like what God's asking you to do, you're not qualified to do. It doesn't make sense to do it. Jesus, listen, we fished all night. We haven't caught anything. And you're saying, God, that doesn't make sense what you're asking me to do. What you're asking me to give, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up with my checkbook. God, you're calling me to serve in an area and I don't even have experience there. You're calling me to release the feelings of bitterness, the resentment that I'm harboring towards someone, but that don't make sense. Like, I'm not letting that person off that easy. That doesn't make sense. But I wonder if there's any Simons here this morning that'll say, okay, but because you said so. Come on, what's God speaking to you this morning? What's God saying to you right now? What's God calling you to do? What's God calling you to step into this morning? You know, because God's speaking to you right now. And you know exactly what he's telling you to do. And you're trying in your mind to come up with every reason why you don't want to do what God's calling you to do. Because it's uncomfortable. Because you think you have a better way, a better plan. Because you've never done it before. It's the unknown and you're kind of scared. And you're like, wow, God, you're asking me to do something I've never even attempted that before. Or maybe you're uncertain, like, but God, what if what you're asking me to do, it doesn't work out? It doesn't make sense. But I wonder if you'd be like Simon this morning and say, but because you said so.